What's up, YouTube? This video is going to be a bit different. The start of it's going to be more voiceover style, but there's a few things I want to go over. So if y'all remember a few months ago, I uploaded a video to the channel which was doing a complete suspension upgrade using Mountain Pass Performance parts. And ever since that video, there's been a few issues. So um, what happened is on the caster adjustable compression rod bearings for the Tesla Model 3 and Y, I'll put an image up of what those look like on the screen now. There's a few issues with those during the install. So the bearings were designed to be used with both Mountain Pass Performance lifted cars and Mountain Pass Performance non-lifted cars or lowered cars. However, during install, my mechanic had a few issues with getting the bearings installed. Mainly, the issues were resulted with the boot. When he was installing them, the boots on both the bearings popped open, and I'll put an image of what that looks like on the screen now. And due to this crack in the location of the bearing in the car's suspension, it was causing issues because where the bearing is located is right behind both the front wheels, and there is no fender liner that blocks that part of where the bearing is. So what it resulted in was water and dirt splashing up right into the bearing because the boots were open, as y'all are seeing on the screen now. And I'll zoom in on this here. What you're seeing here is right under this boot is where the bearing is, right? So if water and dirt is getting in there, that's contaminants that are getting inside that bearing, which is going to cause premature failure of the bearing, and could cause rusting, noises, all kind of bad problems that we don't want to happen, which is the whole purpose of having the boot on a bearing. So after numerous emails with Jesse at Mountain Pass Performance and some of their team there, they ended up coming to a solution to the problem. So while we were emailing back and forth back in, like 3 or 4 months ago, and I followed up with Jesse this past week with the start of the new year just to see if they had made any progress, and they had. Jesse told me that he showed his team the photos that I'm showing y'all now of the bearing and the boots being popped open, and he said they had two mule bearings that they were running. A mule meaning like they were just kind of like being thrown to shit and like being like, like really slammed on the track at their Mountain Pass Performance track that they have, that they do their testing for their suspension components. And he told me that these two bearings both were slammed like crazy, and it was actually another set as well, another two mule bearings on another car, and both were really slammed. And it resulted in neither of them having the boots pop off, which means that the issue, the photos I just showed you with those boots being popped off, is kind of an odd issue, and it's not something that you could typically expect to happen. So it's really not something that great of concern. However, this video's purpose is to tell y'all that Mountain Pass Performance has come up with a foolproof solution for the boots popping open during install. And the images I'm putting up on the screen now are the solution they came up with, which is a piece of safety wire. It's tightened very tightly on both ends of the bearing, and it goes all the way around the boot. So the boot is already secured with a chamfered edge that's slipped over that edge so it cannot pop up. On top of that, there's the safety wire, and the ends of the wire, according to Jesse, are tucked into the bearing itself. So that's to avoid, say, the ends of those wires coming up and tearing into the boot, the rubber boot material. So it's a pretty good solution, and according to what Jesse told me, and I'll put some of these emails up on the screen too, Jesse told me that these boots all of these bearings will now be shipped with the boots secured this way. So if you do buy the caster adjustable compression rod bearings for the Tesla 3 and Y on Mountain Pass Performance's site, they will now all be shipping with the safety wire that I'm showing you on the screen. So this is no longer a concern. But this is some of the process that I was going back and forth with Mountain Pass Performance, and it was like 20 emails back and forth trying to get it figured out. But now it's dialed in to where there is a permanent solution. However, for me, this still leaves me with the original fact that I have, I'll put the images back up, the boots open on the bearings. So what we attempted to do was we attempted to put some bearing grease, very thick bearing grease, into where the boot was open. And after we did that, we attempted to slide the boot back over the chamfered edge and get it back on. However, unfortunately, we could not do that. It just would not, the boot would not go back over the chamfered edge. We kept trying and trying, but like nothing we do would get it back on. So the next step we did was we took a piece of leather and we took some zip ties, the metal zip ties, the big fat ones, strong ones, and we took those zip ties and we put it around the leather, and I'll put that image up on the screen as well. And the idea behind this was it was supposed to, the leather is supposed to wrap around the bearing and act like a boot on the top to cover the boot that was popped open and we couldn't get sealed back down. However, the issue around with the leather is the leather, if you notice there at the bottom, it wasn't very well secured. The zip tie was only at the top, so that bottom lip of leather was wanting to flip up during driving, just with the suspension bouncing around. And once it flipped up, it obviously allowed water and dirt into the bearing again. And with that, all that grease, that big glob of grease there, was gone within days, especially like on a rainy day. I mean, it's just impossible to drive the car. Not impossible, but it's just something you wouldn't want to do because you know all that dirt and water is going straight up into that bearing, which isn't good at all. So that's why I wanted to follow up with Mountain Pass Performance this past week with the start of the new year and see if they come up with a solution. And like I told y'all and I have showed y'all, they have. So now these bearings ship with that wire. But again, this still leaves me with the problem that the leather didn't work to seal the boot. And I already have these two bearings installed, the caster adjustable compression rod bearings on both sides of my car. So it leaves me with the issue that I would have to get with my mechanic, James, and have him take the arms back off, press the bearings out, or just take the arms off and take the wire, like Mountain Pass Performance said, get some safety wire and wrap it around the boot to secure it down like they were saying to do. Now, Mountain Pass Performance did offer me a $50 store credit just for the inconvenience of having to take the arms off to secure the boot back down with the wire like they showed me to do in their email. And you'll be seeing images of that on the screen. But the thing is, I thought about it and I talked about it with James, which is my mechanic, and I've come to the decision that these bearings are really made for a car, Tesla, that is tracked, and they do tell you this in the item description. And when I spoke with Jesse at Mountain Pass Performance, he also told me this, and James also told me this as well. James is like, you're going a bit overkill with the bearings because it's really made for track. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to be taking these bearings out and I'm going to ship them back to Mountain Pass Performance. And I asked Jesse if he would be okay with sending me a pair of their inserts. And I'll put the inserts up on the screen now. And the idea behind these inserts is it goes into the factory bushing that comes with the Tesla Model 3, 2023 and older. It goes into that factory bushing, and it's supposed to reduce the travel. If you notice in the bushing here, there's these grooves, and the grooves are to allow the bushing to flex under load, which is supposed to reduce NVH, according to Tesla. But what it also does is allows there to be a lot of flexibility, especially when braking, and it causes braking to be slightly unstable and, not as fast or stern as the braking could be if it was using bearings. But the idea behind these inserts is to fill those voids in the factory bushing, and that way there's not as much flex in the bushing. And on top of that, you still get the added benefit of having that rubber, which reduces the NVH significantly versus the solid bearing with the boots popped open that I have on there now. Now, I do want to clarify before I go any further, none of this was Mountain Pass Performance's fault. This was something that happened during install. It also wasn't James, my mechanic's fault. It's just when you're using aftermarket parts and you're using them on a car like mine that is also lifted, there's bound to be small errors or complications that will happen. This is with anything aftermarket. It's just part of the game that, we play. So, again, none of this is at fault of any of them. And shout out to Mountain Pass Performance for being so adamantly helpful during this whole process. I mean, this was a several month email process of trying to get this figured out. So what Mountain Pass Performance said that they would also do, which is outstanding, is since I won't be using the version 2 bearings anymore, they are going to send me a pair of the inserts on the house, and these are $150, $55 inserts that they'll be sending me. But the catch is, I did tell them that in exchange, I will send the compression rod bearings, the version 2s, back to them for inspection. That way they can kind of check them out further and get a look at them and maybe further see what happened and what caused the boots to pop off. So that was the deal. They get the version 2s back, I'll get the inserts so I can put them on the car. Now I'm going to switch over to in-person camera here instead of the voiceover. I want to show one more thing. Okay, so here's the in-person switching over. So this is what I ended up doing. This is what the factory bushing looks like, as I showed in the voiceover, and those are the holes that I was telling you about, and that's what the 4 inserts are for. 1, 2, 3, 4 on each one of the arms, the control arms, and that's to reduce that flex that there is back and forth in this bushing. So since the arms that I have on the car are factory arms, that bearing and bushing was pressed in and out of those arms several times when James, mechanic, was doing the install of them. And the reason for that is there's a lot of, when you press it in, if you turn that bearing, and I'll put an image of that up on the screen, it changes the caster on the arm. So in order to get the alignment correct, James had to press and unpress those bearings several times to get them in the right orientation they needed to be for the proper caster that he was trying to get on the car. And as many of you will know, the more times you press something in and out of an arm like this, a casing like this, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker until it becomes not nearly as tight, or maybe even loose compared to what it used to be. That's just how it works. The metal slowly expands. It's just, I mean, it's physics. So with that, these arms are brand new. Both of these control arms are from Moog, and you know, that's because the arms on there now have been pressed several times. I don't want them to even be pressed anymore. So when I send Mountain Pass Performance back the bearings, I will probably send them back both the entire arms with the bearings in it. And part of that is when James does the job for me, I want it to be also as easy for him as possible. So I'm going to have those inserts already installed in both of these arms from Mountain Pass Performance as soon as I get them. And I'm just going to give James both these arms. I mean, these are from Moog. They're not like Moog's Performance series, but they're also not Moog's like cheap lineup either. They're just kind of like the medium grade. But Moog sent them with some nuts for the bolts, and they did put Never-Sees on the threads, however you want to say it. And of course these are also new. The entire arm is new. So the car does have 30,000 miles. These will also get worn down, especially with this being on the bottom of the suspension. And that's just a lot of weight being applied on these. And 30,000 miles, they do start getting worn down. And again, with the arms being pressed in and out that are on the car now, it was probably best that I just get these new arms to replace them. And I'll install the inserts again myself and then give these to James so he can install them straight on like this. And that's just going to reduce labor time for him and make the job a lot easier, as all we have to do is unbolt the old arms, put them to the side, and bolt these arms in, and then check the alignment. Since he has the caster close to stock, and this is going to be stock because these are stock OEM arms from Moog, that he really shouldn't have much of an alignment job to do at all. And he shouldn't have to touch the shim stacks in the front upper control arms either, because the camber shouldn't change with the caster, or at least if it does, it'll be a very small marginal amount. So this whole process will make the job easier, and I will have a follow-up video to this showing these arms with the inserts installed. But again, they just pop right in there. I'll put a photo up on the screen. There's not much to show really. And when this whole job is done, there'll probably be a follow-up video showing the job done with removing the bearings and putting the inserts in. And with not having a track car, with having a daily driver, but performance driven daily driver cars, so like kind of aggressively driven but on the street, this is going to reduce that NVH a lot, as there's really just no need for the bearing unless I was tracking the car. Then it would make sense. But these inserts reduce the deflection of that bushing a lot anyway, to where it's enough that the bearings just truly aren't needed, and it'll make the alignment easier, will make everything just easier. So, and one other thing I want to show is these are the stock bushings that were pressed out in order to install the bearings that are in these control arms now on the Model 3. And you can see this is what they look like versus the Moog ones. Basically identical. If anything, these notches are maybe slightly larger, but in terms of the actual size of where the bolt goes, actually, when I look at that, it looks like the Moog arm actually has a little more teeth gripping on that bolt than the stock ones do. So, I'm actually thinking these Moog arms, I'll have these linked in the description below, have a smaller cutout, which will mean less deflection, and have more teeth grip on the bolt, which are both probably good. So good job to Moog there, and they're labeled left and right. That's pretty nice. So I'll have these linked below if anyone sees this video and has a Model 3 Performance 2023 and older and wants to look into this. I'll put these in the description. Yeah, you can see the teeth are definitely bigger. Well, now we know. Add to here, the reason for the paint on the back of these arms is the whole entire arm is aluminum. However, this part here where the blue paint is actually steel, a type of steel, so it would likely cause it to rust. And I did not want that, so I put a little blue gloss paint to match the MPP. This step was not necessary. I just really dislike rust. I think it's bad for things, which I mean it is. So that's why I did that, just to emphasize in case somebody was wondering why they were painted blue. That was not from Moog. That was something I added just to cover the steel.